Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, and welcome back to today's Daf Hayemi, Maseches CHULLIN Daf Yud Zayin. We begin on Tazayin Amud Beis at the 2 dots, which is around 15 lines from the bottom of the Amud. So this refers back to the Mishnah, where we had the following phrase: Hakoil sheichtin, u'la'olam sheichatin, and there's one more, which is ubakoil sheichtin. The Gemara will analyze what exactly is this referring to. It's a very inclusive statement. Hakoil, all are sheichtin, u'la'olam, anywhere, all the time. And the third one, which will be bakoil. So what's it referring to? Explains the Gemara. Hakoil sheichtin means that we're meant to know that not only do animals, behemoths and chayos, require shechita to be permissible, even birds, fowl, which aren't really articulated in the pasuk, which speaks about shechita. Rashi says, "Afagav deloy ksiv be'shechita behedi." We don't have a clear pasuk for the shechita of birds, but it's a halacha that we know. Some say halacha Moshe Sinai. Okay, so that's what the Mishnah is covering. Even birds require shechita. Hakol shechatin, hakol b'shechita. All require shechita. Even fowl. L'olam shechatin. What's that covering? Mantana. So whose opinion? Whose shita? What are we articulating in this part of the phrase? L'olam. Shechita applies all the time. What does that mean? Mantana. Amar Rabba. Oh, Rabbi Shmuel. It's Rabbi Shmuel speaking. This is Tanya. Ki yarcha Hashem elkecha gvulcha. So this pasuk is in anticipation of entering Eretz Yisrael, when Hashem will expand your territory, kasher dibur lecha, as He promised to you. V'amarta, you'll start contemplating, oichla basar, perhaps I can have some meat. And the pasuk says, sure, go ahead, but do shechita before you eat. So according to Shmuel, the pasuk now is permitting something which was not permitted up until that point. Up until that point, meaning in the midbar, in the desert, when they were camping in close proximity to the Mishkan, you could only have meat as part of a korban offering. You choose to bring a shlamim, sure. Put the blood and the fat on the mizbech, and the basar you can eat, but you can't just arbitrarily decide to take an animal, do shechita and eat it. It's called basar tava, just by way of desire, by way of a whim. You can't do that. And that changed once we enter Eretz Yisrael. And that's what the pasuk here is allowing. The whole point of the pasuk is to allow consumption of meat just for the sake of consumption, not in a, as part of a korban arrangement. Because up until that point, that was it. It's either a korban or nothing. Because initially, you could not have just meat per se, only as part of a korban arrangement. And that changed when they entered Eretz Yisrael. Once our nation entered the land, you can have meat, just regular. So this is the pasuk. Comes our Mishnah and adds to that. What happens after we went into exile? We left Eretz Yisrael. Perhaps you would think, now that we, Klal Yisrael, went into exile, perhaps you can suggest, you can have a notion that it reverts back to its former status. You can't have meat just so. Yachal yachzru lisurn rishon. Perhaps they revert back to the original prohibition. Comes the Mishnah and clarifies that for us. L'kach sheninu. That's what we learn in the Mishnah. La'olam. Sheichat and shechita is permissible all the time. So even now, you can shecht and eat. Maskav Rav Yosef. I have a question, says Rav Yosef, on this explanation in our Mishnah. Why does the Mishnah put the stress on the shechita? You can always do shechita. I mean, it's seemingly missing the point. the point is to allow shechita for personal consumption, right? It should have said you can shech to eat. I mean, that's the main point. That's the main message. Don't worry, eat it. Why does the Mishnah focus on the act of shechita? Furthermore, why would you even think that it's usher nowadays? Why was it usher in the midbar initially? Because they were next to the Mishkan, so it was easy to bring a carbon and eat it in that manner. Going forward, why did that change? When they enter Eretz Yisrael, right, as the pasuk says, look, you have an expanded territory, you're living far away. So they were far away from the Mishkan, from the Beis HaMikdash. It was impractical to require everybody to bring karbanos all the time and only eat, meat in that manner. Return to Yud. Okay, so then that would apply today too. If we're in Golos, V'koshken, for sure. If anything, all the more. Hashta now, that Klal Yisrael had even arrived at greater distances, further away from the Beis HaMikdash. Of course, there isn't even a Beis HaMikdash. Of course, the Shita here, the Laisi Klal, there is no way. Of course, Lishri, it should be mutter. So why even talk about it? So it's plain and simple, obvious. Ella, rather, Amar of Yosef, I'll give you a different pshat in the Mishnah. Rebbe Kiva, it's following the Shita of Rebbe Kiva, who says, look, you need to do shechita. Don't think you just rip open the neck and the sanya. We have a brayso ki yichak mchamokim ashivcha Hashem elkecha osam shma yisham. So you'll be living in Eretz Yisrael, right? And you'll be now further away from the Mikdash, from the Mishkan. Go ahead. You can shecht your animals. And it's the next pasuk of the previous pasuk of Kiyarach Vashem Esgulcha, right? When you enter Eretz Yisrael, you're living all over the place. Do shechita and eat. What's the message? What's the point of the pasuk? Obviously, to eat you have to do shechita. No, not so simple. Guess what? The terms have now changed. The Torah now has to prohibit basar meat of nechira, of just a torn open animal that did not undergo the shechita experience. Because initially, because back in the midbar, they didn't have to do shechita. They could just eat meat as is. The pasuk here is instructing them that upon entry to Eretz Yisrael, the rules have changed. Basar nechira, just ripping open the neck and killing the animal that way, that doesn't work anymore. Shechita is required. So go to Rebbe Kiva, astonishingly, right? In the midbar, they don't need shechita. Only in Eretz Yisrael. Oh, that's what happens now after Galus occurs. Now that they went into exile, perhaps it just goes back to the former system of Nechira. Yochel, Yachzru, Leter, Narishim, perhaps they go back to the original Heter, where Shechita is not a requirement. And comes the Mishnah and says, no, Lo'ilam. Once the Shechita process, the Shechita requirement has been applied, Lo'ilam Shechten, it stays on for all time. It doesn't get suspended anymore. Okay, so bottom line is, we have a Mishnah, Bakol Shechten, two ways to explain. According to Rabbi Shmuel, you would think that since in the midbar you couldn't have basar tava, meaning meat consumption out of a carbon arrangement, so although in Eretz Yisrael it became mutter, but what happens today when we're out of Eretz Yisrael, perhaps you go back to Lo'ilam Shechten, even today you could shecht and eat. According to Rabbi Kiva, in the midbar they did not need to do shechita. Nechira was enough. It was only required once they enter Eretz Yisrael. And the Mishnah is telling us, look, it applies today too. What's the machlekes about? between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Akiva savar basar tavalo itzer klal. Rabbi Akiva says, since when can't you just have meat for personal consumption without a carbon, alibi, so to speak? So according to him, there was no isser to eat basar tav in the midbar. So this whole, Rabbi Shmuel's whole approach doesn't really appeal to him. Rabbi Shmuel says, look, on the other hand, I disagree with your concept that you could just have basar nechira in the midbar. No, never. Hence, there are two divergent approaches to the historical sequence of events. Okay, now Bishlam Rabbi Shmuel. So certainly according to Rabbi Shmuel, who maintains that shechita was always a requirement. That explains the pasuk in Vayikra, which is in the midbar, by the carbon that you have to do shechita because it's the only way. Hell, Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, who says nechira in the midbar was acceptable. My v'shachat. So why does the pasuk mention v'shachat? Kachim shani. That's a carbon. That's certainly a required procedure for a carbon. We're talking about non-carbon consumption. Okay. Next, Bishleim Rabbi Shmuel. So certainly according to him, so again, this is a pasuk in the midbar where Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, look, how can I shecht so many animals to feed them? Oh, but he's referring to shechita. Apparently shechita was a requirement all along. El Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, who says it wasn't, why is he referring to shechita? He should have said Yinacher. Nechira is enough. Nechira shlan zu shchitas, and you're right. Just a mode of expression. Nechira would do the same, have the same effect. In the midbar, nechira is like a shchita. That's a way to terminate the life of the behema and to permit it for consumption. Bishlam Rabbi Shmuel. Okay, so again, according to him, that explains, since he says that really nechira was never an accepted form of processing the animal, that would explain the Mishnah, which is actually now Masechta later on regarding kisui hadam, right? There's a requirement to cover the blood of a chaya after shechita, right? Hain dusnan hashoched v'nesnabla b'yadai v'anoicher. Let's say a person does an unsuccessful shechita, the animal dies, or he does nechira, v'ma'akari yanks out the simanim, pater malachases. That's not a proper permissible, type of shechita, and there's no kisui hadam on that. So according to Rishmo, we understand they don't qualify as shechita. Nechira as well, right? El Rabbi Akiva, but according to Rabbi Akiva, who says nechira, at least back in the midbar, was a form of life termination, which was tantamount to an act of shechita. So even nowadays, that it's been sort of taken off the table, but it should still, you would think it still maintains some status. It's still considered a formal, format of terminating the animal's life, and it should require kisui adam. The answer is, well, things have changed. Now it's no longer considered as such. Once nechira became asur, off the table, itzer, so now it's disregarded. It's not an act of, it's not considered like an act of shechita. Okay, now we'll go the other way. Bishleima l'Rebbe Akiva. So certainly according to Rebbe Akiva, the Amor tells us basar taivel itzer klal. There was never any restriction against just eating meat for personal, having meat for personal consumption. Even in the midbar, that explains the pasuk, which says, well, now you're in, you're going to be in Eretz Yisrael, and you can have your sheep, you can shecht, right? Just like you have a tzviva ayil, those deer or whatever, right? They used to have until now, which indicates that the tzviva ayil were perfectly permissible up until this point, even in the midbar. And of course, we know tzviva ayil are not karbanos. You can't bring a carbon from tzviva ayil. They're classified as chaya. So the pasuk seems to be alluding to the fact that they would have just plain meat to eat, even in the midbar. But according to him, you couldn't just eat plain meat. So the tzvi ayil itself, how would you even know that it was permissible? Miyavi, shari, why would it be mutter? You're using that as a sort of a point of reference. Just like you ate those, you'll eat, the sheep now going forward. Implying that a tzviva ayil were permissible in the midbar. Why? The answer is, because it was not able to be used as a carbon. The point's like this: a sheep, a goat, which can be served as a carbon, you must do that if you want to consume it. So you limit it. You can't eat it any other way. But something which is not a carbon candidate, like a chaya, like a tzviva ayil, so it's never really covered under this system. And you could shecht it and you have it. That's the Gemara's teretz. The Torah only restricted regarding a behema, the chajil akrava, which is suitable to be brought as it's a carbon candidate. So if it's a carbon, you can eat it, otherwise not. But a chaya like a tzviva ayil, the chajil akrava, which is not suitable for akrava in any case, loy asar rachman, the Torah never forbade that, even in the midbar. Okay, so according to Rabbi Kiva, you can do nechira in the midbar and eat, but not in Eretz Yisrael. Boy, Rabbi Yirmiyah, I have a question. He says, what if you have a carryover? You did nechira in the midbar, now you have some meat, and now you're in Eretz Yisrael. You imported it to Eretz Yisrael. Can you still eat it? Because after all, the act of nechira already happened in the midbar. It became mutter. Why would it be asr now? On the other hand, you can say the heter of nechira was only applicable in the midbar, but now you're in a different environment. So that very same piece of meat becomes asr. Interesting question. By Rabbi Yirmiyah, evare, the limbs, the parts of an animal, basar of nechira, sheichnisu Yisrael imayin la'aretz, which Yisrael brought with them into Eretz, imported Eretz Yisrael. Ma, what's their status? Ask the Gemara. Hold it. Amos, at what point in history are we talking about? We know that initially, the first 7 years were called Sheva Shekavshu, the 7 years that they conquered Eretz Yisrael, and then it was followed by 7 years of allotment, of distribution, Sheva Shechilku. Amos, Ilema b'Sheva Shekavshu, we're talking about the first 7 years. There's no issue with this meat. Hashta davar tameh, even non-kosher meat that they found locally in Eretz Yisrael, Yishrilu, were permitted to them. The Chsiv as a pasuk refers to them. Batim leim kol tuv, you find homes filled with all goodies, all kinds of loot, even non-kosher meat. Rab Kadli, Kasli, the Chaziri, dried Chazir meat was permissible, they could eat it. So of course, Basar Nechira, why are you even asking about Basar Nechira, their own meat that they were Neicher, they can eat anything? Elachi Mekan was speaking after the first 7 years. So our question still stands, but just later. Somehow they preserved it. Past 7 years, that's right here. Another answer would be certainly it's the first 7 years that we're talking. As per your question, no, a big difference. They could eat the local material that they find, but they can't eat their own non-kosher material. It's a whole different story. The only thing that was permitted for them, despite its non-kosher status, shalal, the loot, that they found locally by the goyim. They do lo ishtari, but not material that the Yidden actually own, which are deemed non-kosher. That there's no heter for during the 7 years. So the question now is, does the original heter status stick or not? We'll leave it unresolved. Now this whole thing was triggered by the phrase in the Mishnah, Hakol shoychten, u'la'olam shoychten. Amar Rabba. Okay, Shonis Hakol shoychten. You've resolved the first part, Hakol means, which material requires shchita, what is subject to shchita, foul as well. Next, u'la'olam shoychten. So that's also referring to the subject material, right? That nowadays, even during Galus, you can shecht and eat. You have to shecht, right? Either whichever way we like, right? What about the third part of the phrase? Bakoil shechten. What's that referring to? Honestly, how'd you explain that? Perhaps that's referring to the act of shchita, not the subject matter, just the way you do shchita. What type of utensil do you use for shchita? So perhaps bakoil means you can use anything, any sharp instrument. Perhaps you'll say bein betzur means you can use a sharp stone. Bein beschuch is glass. Bein bekrum shalkana, sharp piece of bamboo. So it turns out that the phrase sort of splits. Hakoil eloilam relates to the subject matter experiencing the shechita, the fowl, the meat nowadays, whereas bakoil is a halacha referring to the sheichet, how he executes, what type of instrument that he uses, which is unlikely that one phrase would have sort of two connotations. Hadumi dahanach katani, we assume the third part of the phrase corresponds to the first two. If the first two speak about the sheichet, the halachas of doing the shechita, then we assume the third one as well. The first two are talking about the subject matter that are going through the shechita. Let's assume the third is also referring to that. Let's keep it consistent. Therefore, says Rava, let's shy away from this whole track. We have a different way to explain the Mishnah, a more simple way. Elam Rava. It's all referring to the act of shechita, halachas relating to the person doing the shechita, how he does it, not regarding the subject matter being shechted. We have a kol shechtin over here in the Mishnah, we have it back in that base. One is to allow a kuti, one is even a renegade Jew. Shechtin means do it whenever you want, wherever you want. By day, at night, with a floodlight, on the roof, on the boat. Because shechten, you can use anything for shechita, any sharp instrument. Okay, Mishnah continues. Make sure it's nice and smooth, the knife, without ridges, without bumps and nicks. Because when there's a bump deep enough, it's going to rip the neck, it's going to make it a trev, it's going to injure it. And that disqualifies the shechita. Chutz magal kotzer v'megera. Can use a sickle or a saw. Havod Shmuel, so Shmuel's father, Pagam, he took a knife and he nicked it. V'shadar, Pagam v'shadar, and he sent it to the Chacham Eretz Yisrael. Pagam v'shadar, another one and sent it, so he sent many samples to clarify with them what exactly is considered a disqualifying nick. How deep does it have to be to disqualify the knife? Shochle, they responded, Kim Megera Shaninu, look at the Mishnah, Megera. That's the descriptive standard. Megera, a deep nick. Rashi explains that Megera has 2 points, right? So if this is the blade, right, goes straight, and then you have a deep nick, like a V, and comes back up. So you have 1 point on the left, 1 point on the right. The Gemara later calls it oigeres. It gathers, the skin gets stuck inside and it rips it. So that disqualifies the knife. But if it doesn't have that double edge, that double corner, let's say it just sort of gradually slopes down and then comes up abruptly, so it only has one corner, one tip, one sharp edge, we'll see in a minute, that doesn't necessarily disqualify the knife if you're careful in how you use it. Tanar Rabbanan, we learned in a brayso regarding knives used for shechita. We turn Talmud Bavli. Sakan sheish b'pekima is harbe. So first of all, we have a knife full of nicks, full of bumps. Well, you can't use that. Tidan kimegera is treated like a saw, totally disqualified. There's no way to use it. However, but suppose there's only one nick. Could you still use the knife? Sometimes. Depends on the shape of the bump. Oigeres, as we explained before, it's like a V. So again, the knife is like a straight, blade is like a straight knife, a straight line. And it comes down like a V, back up, right? So then you have a point here and a point here. And oigeres, it gathers. It traps the skin. Rashi brings a pasuk Mishlei agra b'katzer machala, like the ant gathers and stores its food very diligently, right? So if the knife has that capacity to sort of gather and trap the skin, that's terrible. That's going to rip to the sula. However, let's say it's not so sharp. The hole, the nick isn't so drastic. It's mesuch seches, which we'll see in a minute exactly what this is. Basically, you have the straight line of the blade, then it circles down, so you don't have that first tip coming down. There's no sharpness there, and then it abruptly makes its way back up, and has a sharp tip there. So it's really only one danger point. Mesuch seches, Rashi brings, is like jumping. The knife sort of jumps over the skin. It's not going to rip it. It's not really going to get caught in there. It's like a dip, right? There's only one sharp edge, not two. Then technically you can somehow get around it and use it. Ksher. Hechidamya igeres. What defines igeres? Hechidamya misuch seches. What defines misuch seches? As we explained, or lezer igeres means mishtei ruchois. Then it has the sharpness on both sides, like a V. Misuch seches is only rachachas. Only has a sharp point on one side. Now what's the difference? Ma'ishna mishtei ruchois. Why is it that let's call it the V and the dipper, okay? The V one, destructive. Puzzle. Why? Let's think for a second. The shechita has to make its way through a lot of layers. The outer skin, right? Some flesh, then it gets down to the simanim. So what's the issue? So why would you understand better in the case where it has 2 points that in fact it can harm and damage and rip the animal? The morsha kama, because the first tip, machlish, it thins. It sort of bores into the skin before it gets to the simanim. Umorsha basra baza. And once you get to the second point, that punctures the simanim. That's a 1-2 punch, and it makes it a treif. Well, the same issue applies in the mesuch seches. So even though it's just one sharp corner, but until you get to that corner, you're cutting through. You're using the blade of the knife, the kosher part of the blade, the smooth part, to bore through, to cut through, and then by the time you get to the simanim, you're at the point, and it's going to rip the simanim. Even if it's just one tip on one side, chur for the sagina machlish, chur for the sharpness of the blade will thin out, will give access into the neck. More shabaz on the sharp corner will rip, will puncture. So why is that any better? Oh, the kaim, this circular nick is situated where areisha the sakina, in front, at the front. So it's not a 1-2 punch, because it's right there. You haven't yet really cut anything to give the sharp tip access to the simanim. It won't reach the simanim. Well, one second. Aren't you going back and forth? So if ultimately ki azla machlasha. So when you're going forward, you're going to thin out, meaning you're going to cut through the first layers. Ki asabaza, when you do the return trip, you're going to now hit the sharp edge on this simanim and puncture it. You're going to shalach v'lehevi. He only went one way, not back. He only went forth and not back. So, as we're going to see in a minute, it's not really advisable, because typically you go back and forth and you might mistakenly do that. But technically, if he did it this way, he was careful. So we have 3 conditions to allow even a knife with a nick. It's sharp only on one side, as opposed to a full V. It's like a dipper, right? It's situated at the front of the knife, and he only went forward without going back. Amar of a gimovidas besakin. So, in fact, we have 3 levels, 3 categories regarding knives. Oy geres, that's the worst, like a real deep cut, like a V, with 2 tips, 2 sharp points. Lo yishchayt v'mshachat shechitos psul. Don't use it. If you use it, it's possible, because the 2 tips execute that 1-2 punch. One gives access, the other one cuts through simanim. The mid layer is the middle case is the misuch seches. It's not preferred, because you might mistakenly take it 2 ways. But if otherwise you did it, Shechitasa is ksher. Oil yared, here comes a third type. Oil yared b'saken. Suppose it's not really a nick. It's not really a blemish. Oil yared means it goes up and down. It's like a semicircle. It's a circular knife. So the blade sort of, maybe due to excessive sharpening, right? But it's smooth. It's super sharp. It's just a bit circular. That's okay. As long as we don't have like a drastic drop, like a bump, with any sharpness or anything like that, it's A1. It's perfect. Okay. Amalei Rav Huna Breder Nechemi Rav Ashi. So you turn to Rav Ashi. Amar Stam Shmei Rava. You have told us the name of Rava. Misuch Sechas Pesula. You can't use a Misuch Sechas. It's even possible. V'ha Tanya, but we learned in a brisa that it works. Misuch Sechas is kshera. The answer is, was it one way or two ways? Like Kasha, Kan Shalach V'Hevi. If you did it two ways, then it's possible. Kan Shalach V'Hevi. If you only did it one way, that's okay. Amalei Rav Achbed Rav Ari Rashi. Damila Sasamai. Sasa is like the crown around the stalks, like the wheat, right? It has like these pointy, like these fibers. So you touch it, it's like a little bit bumpy, a bit ridged. It's not really a nick. It's not really right. It's not sharp. It's just a little bit unsmooth. What if the knife feels like that? Amalei says it's fine. That's not going to puncture anything. That's not going to rip anything. And he expressed himself with such confidence. I wish somebody would serve me some of that meat. I'll eat it. Meat of animal shechta with this type of knife. That's how he was. That's how certain he was that it's okay. What do we find in the Torah? A source. That one is required to closely examine. We'll see soon how it's done. Examine the knife of shechita prior to the act of shechita. Shnem, we have a pasuk by Yishol HaMelech who told them, look, we're ready to make a feast. Use this knife, it's been checked, and you'll eat. Pshita says the Gemara, why a source? I mean, plain logic, plain common sense. Kivan dechinakav treifa. Look, if the knife has a hole, it is blemished, and it punctures the simanim, the animal's a treifa, and of course you should check it. I mean, boya b'dika, of course. L'chacham kamrina. We were looking to find a source that one has to bring the knife to the chacham, to the elder, the town rav. Of course you have to check it, but the rav has to check it. And that we see from Shaul HaMelech. That he checked it. Asked the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. But he told us, Amru laharis sakan l'chacham, ela mekvayda shel chacham. No point of showing the sakan to the chacham was a practice established by the chachamim to uphold his honor, his stature. And here we're saying it's a pasuk in the Torah. But the Rabbanon, you're right, it's only a takana the Rabbanon. But Kra, the pasuk that we learned it from Asmach, the Baum was just a support. It's sort of a hint to this concept. Okay, so we learned that knife has to be unblemished, has to be examined. How do we examine it? So there were different methods of examination. Marava, Eretz Yisrael, Batkle b'Shimsha. They would check it opposite the sun and see if there's any, imperfections. But Narda, Batkle b'Maya. In Narda they used water. One pshat in Rashi is that they ran a drip from top to bottom. See if it runs over the blade smoothly or it gets stuck. Rav Sheshes Badakla B'Reish Lishnei. Rav Sheshes, listen, he would use the tip of his tongue, run it over the blade carefully to see if it has any pagima. Rav Achbar Yaakov Badakla B'Asara. He would run a hair over it. B'Sura Amri, in Surah they held that you have to use flesh, like a tongue or something like that, because the whole point of the knife is to cut through flesh to see. You're trying to test to see if it's going to get stuck, right, on flesh. If flesh is going to get sort of caught into it. So you have to, likewise, use similar material. Otherwise, if you use material which is dissimilar to flesh, how's that a proper test? Imagine if it's rougher material, it might just jump over the begima. If it's too mushy, it's just going to get stuck even in a very small pegima. So you have to specifically use something which is similar to the material that's going to be operated on. B'Surah Amri, in Surah they maintained, Bisra Achla, the knife is meant to consume basar, Bisra Livdika. You have to use basar to check it. Only that is considered a fair test. Yeah, you have to use basar. So he would use a finger. Vatufan, also on the nail. So you have to check the knife running it across the skin of the finger and also across the nail. Taisa says why a double test? Because you're shechting two things. The flesh is a test regarding the shchita on the veshet, on the food pipe, which is soft flesh, and the fingernail is required for the kana, which is more of a cartilage material. It's like a bone material. Vatufer, right, over the fingernail as well. Vatregi sane, and also on both sides of the knife. So the tip, the blade, and also the sides, the wall, because if there's any blemish there, it's going to rip the sides of the simanim. Amali Ravinu Ravashi. Amarlon Rav Sama, Breder Misharshi, he told us Mishmach in your name. The Amr Slay that you told him, Mishmei Rav, in the name of Rava. You have to check by running it over the skin, the nail, and all three sides of the knife. Amr Lay, he says, no. Yeah, I spoke about the skin and the nail, but not about the three sides. I didn't speak about all three sides. Some say he responded, yeah, I spoke about the skin, the nail, and the three sides, but the source here is incorrect. I wasn't quoting Rava. They were sitting in front of Rashi. So Sheikh brought a knife to Ravashi to check it. So Ravashi turned to the Rav Achbed Rava, Vidka, please check it for me. But got to from a bistros, he checked it over the fingernail, over his skin. On the three sides. Amrlei. So Ravashi gave him a yashar koyach, yishar. Chazak v'amatz, right? Yashar koyach. V'chein Rav Kana. Rav Kana also required such an extensive examination. Rav Yemer Amar, however, he disagrees. Atufra v'abisra tzricha. Yeah, I agree. It's got to go over the skin, over the fingernail. But on the side, the walls of the knife, that's not required. That's not needed. Why? Why, yeah, it's not going to come into contact with the simanim. Because look, the knife is super sharp. So the blade is going to cut the simanim, which will now widen to the point that the walls of the knife, by the time the walls get there, it's not going to be there. It's not going to be touching anything. So since there's no contact, it's not important to check it. And he compares it to halacha we had the other day. Miloi Amar Bzeira Mashmol Libein Sakan. Didn't we learn that Shmuel tells us if one heats up a knife red hot and does shchita with that knife, a sharp knife, red hot, did it burn or did it cut? Right? It's okay. Why? Shechiduda, because the sharpness of the blade, the cutting effect, precedes the burning effect, which takes more time to transfer. So we know it cut rather than burnt. Yeah, but that's good regarding the tip of the blade. What about the walls, which are now embedded in the simanim coming down? They're going to burn it up sideways. The question we had on that was, oh, you could start, what about the sides of the knife? The answer was, no concern. There's no contact. The place of the shchita mirvach ravach expands and widens. Hachanami here as well, regarding the blemished knife on the walls, who cares? Beis hashchita mirvach ravach. Amar Avuna Rav Katina, we're speaking about blemishes in shchita knives, and actually in many other places in the Torah we have disqualifying blemishes, like by a korban, which makes it into a mum. What's a shear? What amount? How deep is the nick to be considered? So as we learned, it's significant enough that the person's fingernail gets caught on it, that's a problem. The same exact shear, that same exact standard applies to all these other places as well. If it's that deep, it's disqualifying. There were three instances that a pegima, that a nick, is a disqualifying phenomenon. And they all relate to this shiur as well. Pegimas esma Pesach, we know we're not allowed to break a bone on the korban Pesach, while consuming it, right? And even a nick. Firstborn kosher animal b'char, which is kaddish, like a carbon, right? It is a carbon, right? And if it has a moment blemish, even a nicked bone, a nicked ear. Same thing regarding a regular carbon, right? If it has a mum, you can't bring it as a carbon. So even a small blemish, a small nick of this size disqualifies it. Likewise, the knife of shchita. Now the first shita, why did he not put shchita on the list? He wasn't speaking about chulin, he was speaking about carbon-related, nicks. So in all these places, pigimasan, what's the shear? How significant is the pigima? Kadei pigimas hamizbech. The same as the pigima which qualifies the mizbech and the Beis, which is meant to be sholem, full and complete and whole without any blemishes. Any nick disqualifies it. Oh, and how much is that? We move on to the next daf. Oh, finally, even if it's just deep enough for the tzipar and one's fingernail to get caught on it, is considered puzzle. Meisvei comes a kasha. That minute, really? What is the begim of a mizbeach? Reb Shimon Nechai Omer tefach. It's be a tefach in size. Pretty significant breakage. Reb Lezer Yaakov Omer kazayis, not a tefach, but a kazayis. And they would say just a small nick, like kasha. Answers like this. Depends on what part of the mizbeach. Haba sida haba avna. They were talking about the sid, the plaster portion of the mizbeach. So as long as the mizbeach still looks complete, that's enough. Haba avna, we're talking about the stones. Rashi brings the pasuk, avanim shleimus. The stones have to be complete, unblemished, and even a small nick disqualifies it. Okay, let's review today's daf. We began with the phrase in the Mishnah, hakol sheichten, bakol sheichten, lo'elam sheichten. Initially, we related it to Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva, regarding nowadays. You could have shchita and eat it even without bringing it as a carbon. According to Rabbi Kiva, you need shchita, you can't do nechira like they did in the midbar. So that revolved around that machlekes. But what happened in the midbar? According to Rabbi Shmuel, they couldn't eat basar tava. According to Rabbi Kiva, they could. Just the opposite. They don't even eat shchita, even nechira is enough. But certainly all that changed when they came to Eretz Yisrael, and the point of the Mishnah is to say, well, whatever status happened in Eretz Yisrael continues on for all time. We had a shiloh about basar nechir that came into Eretz Yisrael. Does it maintain its heter or not? Rabbi took a different approach to the Mishnah. He says it's all going on the act of shchita, the person doing the shchita, who could do it, when, how. And that took us into the next discussion regarding the knife that's meant to be preferably nice and smooth and sharp, unblemished. But if there are any blemishes, we have 3 different levels. A serious blemish which has 2 sharp edges disqualifies. Just 1 sharp edge, if it's done carefully, just one direction, all that, it works. And regarding just a circular knife, oil of yared would be l'chatchila. Saka needs bedika, of course, and it's meant to be done by the chacham, ekveda shel chacham. How does one check a knife? According to Surah, it has to be done with basar, and that seems to have been the accepted system here. They use their finger, their skin, and the nail as well to cover the kana and the veshet, aspects of the shchita. Machlek is where they have to check the walls and make sure they're perfect as well. And concluded with the halacha of pkimas of tzipiren, which applies to us, applies to mizbeach, applies to the stolen part of the mizbeach, to karbanos, and to the eating of the carbon pesach. Okay, all the best to you and much hatzlacha.